Hello and welcome to 2024 Los Angeles Rams team preview. Matthew Stafford and company sure look like one of the NFL's best offenses when healthy last year. Will that persist into 2024? Kyren Williams back for an encore after one heck of a breakout 2023 campaign. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, all that and so much more. Just give us 30 minutes. We'll get you caught up on everything you need to know about your Los Angeles Rams. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. Welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. And joining me, as always, is Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland. And Dwain, looking at this Rams squad, 10-7 last year, competitive wildcard loss to the Lions. But again, top 4 offense in both EPA per play and yards per play when Matthew Stafford was under center. So this time last year, we were even using the R word, wondering if, we actually could get a retirement out of Stafford due to neck and elbow injuries. Now we're looking at him saying maybe, just maybe, they can start partying like 2021 again. And in Fantasyland, he was indeed the QB 11 in 2021. So QB 29 in 2022, somewhere in between last year. What version of Stafford do you believe we'll get in 2024?
Yeah, I think we're going to get something in between those. I mean, he just had such an efficient year 2 seasons ago, especially like in the touchdowns per attempt department. But obviously, you have Puka Nacua, who emerged as a superstar for the team last year. Cooper Kupp, who's getting a little bit older, but if Cooper Kupp can hang on for another season, I think we would argue, Ian, if those two guys are going and rolling at full strength based on what we saw at different points last season, it could be one of the top 5 offenses. Like, I wouldn't put that out of range. I mean, the guy averaged 287 yards per game 2 seasons ago, and last year got it back up to 264 after being at 232 in 2022. Now, there were games, obviously, in 2022 where he was very banged up trying to play through that. Even had a little bit of that last year, once we got into the season. But I think if you look at a guy like Stafford, if you can typically put up those kind of yards, there's going to be some more touchdowns to come along with it. And so I think that's the big thing, Ian. We talk about this all the time with these pocket passers. It comes down to the yards are going to we can predict a little bit more consistently, but how does it work out from a touchdowns per attempt? Last year it was 4.6%. The league average is 4.2%. 2 years ago, that was 6.8%. When we look back at Stafford's career, he's got a couple of other seasons where he got up over 5. We also have Sean McVay as a coordinator. We'll talk about more here in just a little bit that we really like. So I do think Stafford could be one of these guys that's getting forgotten. I think some of it comes down to the age. He'll be 36.6 exactly when the season starts, Ian. So closer to 37 than 36 years old, but hasn't really shown any signs of dropping off with his play on the field other than some of the lingering issues that have, from an injury standpoint, that over the last couple of seasons we've seen pop up, right? Whether that's shoulder, wrist, back, there's been a lot of different things. So I think McVay has got to really this year focus on how do we keep Matthew Stafford upright, avoid some of these hits we don't want him to be taking. If he can stay healthy, man, and he's upright all season, I think there is a chance he's the guy that you look up and you're like, wow, like he scored as many points per game as Joe Burrow. That I think that would be like your comp. Like if you're hoping for a major arbitrage play, you're hoping to get one of these guys going later in draft that can perform similar to a Dak Prescott or a Joe Burrow that's going much earlier.
And that really is the conversation we have with any of these pocket quarterbacks. There's Stroud and Burrow at the top of the ranks. Then in the middle tier, we kind of got Tua and Brock Purdy, who are being boosted up because, accordingly, of their awesome. I don't think a Dak is a pocket passer, though. I mean, we're actually getting some.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, Dak doesn't run enough. Like, he gives you a little bit, but I think he's still in that. I mean, Joe Burrow scrambles as much as Dak, like when he's healthy.
All right. Dak Prescott, pocket passer. You heard it from Dwain. Definitely didn't lead the SEC back in rushing or score 6 touchdowns per year on the ground, back in the day, but it is
definitely not like 8 years ago. But
3% of fantasy production from Stafford came from rushing last year. That is right there with Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa, and Kirk Cousins. So if you want to throw Dak in that conversation, feel free. Anyway, Stafford is going, again, well outside the top 150 picks in ESPN and Yahoo leagues. He's going behind Trevor Lawrence, behind Deshaun Watson. I don't think you consider them pocket passers, Dwain. Personally, I would take T-Law and Watson ahead of Stafford. But again, does he have a pretty good best case scenario? Sure, but we can kind of make that again for many quarterbacks going inside the top 20, top 25. So yeah, if we happen to be in a best ball format where you're trying to stack, you got Puka or Kupp, fine, go ahead and get them. But I don't think we're advising, Dwain, for people to necessarily go into drafts and saying, boy, I cannot wait to leave a Stafford as my QB1.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're really loaded elsewhere, like it can work, but I don't think that's the plan that you go in with. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, dude, like on the pocket passer stuff, like Stroud, 11 yards rushing per game last year. Dak Prescott, 14. You look at Brock Purdy, what was he at? 9. I mean, Love, 15. So like tiering those guys, I would have to tier all those guys together and then tier separately, Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford. But at the end of the day, like they're not winning your game. They're not winning you games on their rushing. They're sprinkling some here or there. And that's just the stage that Dak's at this point.
Puka Nacua, star wide receiver last year, obviously broke the rookie receiving record. Yeah, pretty good. That said, in 12 full games together, Puka had 100 targets, Cooper Kupp, 99 targets. Now, Puka certainly outproduced them, but, we do have this tendency, guys, when we have players like Cooper Kupp, who, lest we forget, pulled his hamstring in August, and then all of a sudden is suffering a sprained ankle during the season, was never even close to healthy last year. But then when we kind of look at it in retrospect, we don't give him the benefit of the doubt that he was playing through pain. It's just more so he's old and he is probably washed. So Puka now, not exactly a waiver wire darling. He is someone that is likely going to cost you a first round pick in order to acquire for your fantasy team. I do agree with the idea that it is hard to get him too far down the ranks. Again, he is obviously a really freaking good receiver, but man, for wide receivers like AJ Brown and, Tyreek Hill, we've seen multiple years of evidence that AJB is working ahead of Devonta Smith, that Tyreek is working ahead of Jalen Waddle. I don't think we have really any evidence that Puka is doing that ahead of Cooper Kupp right now, yet we have to draft him like he is. So again, I think Puka is closer to the wide receiver 10 than the wide receiver 7, where you usually have to draft him. That officially makes me a hater, but man, Dwain, just seems like we're really quick to crown Puka in an offense where he could still rather easily be the number 2 wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem drafting Puka where he's going. I think you're right on all the concerns around Kupp. I wrote that up in the wide receiver tier article, like how much of it was due to the injuries that he's playing through, and he was still earning basically as many targets as Puka. But the beauty of this is we saw them both earn all those targets in games together multiple times last year. So it's just a very consolidated offense, and they don't have another high-end weapon. Demarcus Robinson's, and he's a nice throw-in, but he's not going to suddenly be a 25% target share guy. So they're funneling all the stuff through 2 guys, and these are the guys that are getting most of the motion routes. They're getting all of the ideal looks off of the Sean McVay, scheme stuff. So I think there's a world where they both live together and they're both fine. And in that world, I still think you want to lean more heavily to the young player. Puka Nacua is going to be 24 whenever we go into the season. Look at Cooper Kupp. He'll be 31. Cooper Kupp also over the last 2 seasons has been battling injuries. He also battled injuries earlier in his career. So that is a major red flag historically once you get to this age bucket. So for me with Cooper Kupp, I think he belongs at the bottom of the wide receiver 2 conversation just because of the concerns of he could just hit a cliff. It could be due to injuries. It might not be due to injuries, but he's in that range where it happens. And we've seen 22% of the time, former elite wide receiver 1s give you no warning, and they just immediately turn into wide receiver 4s. And Cooper Kupp's in that range. So 1 in 5 chance. I'm not really worried about that so much with Puka, because historically guys that have shown us this in year 1, they all go on to continue to be really good wide receivers. So I agree. Maybe the gap's a little too large, but I think that largely, like, the market really has it right. I do believe Puka should be a late round 1 pick. I think whenever you're looking at Cooper Kupp, you're looking at more of a round 3, round 4 pick.
Puka versus Garrett Wilson, Drake London. Who are you taking?
I'm taking Puka over Drake London. And I think Puka and Garrett Wilson, I've got them in the same tier. So, I mean, it really just comes down to the 2 guys. But I will say this, Puka has actually proven that he can do it, more than just getting the targets. We know that mostly the target stuff for Garrett Wilson has got to be tied to the quarterback thing. That impacts your yards per route run, like, in such a huge way. But I wouldn't have a problem if somebody says they want to take Garrett Wilson over Puka Nacua. Whenever I wrote up the wide receiver tiers, I said the guy after CeeDee Lamb goes off the board that is the most like CeeDee Lamb is Garrett Wilson, meaning you've got a quarterback that we think we're okay with Aaron Rodgers. He's already shown he can earn a massive target share. And then now we've got a situation where there's just not a lot of competition around him. And I think you can make a major argument for Garrett Wilson that the target competition is far, far less than what Puka Nacua is going to be facing with Cooper Kupp.
I'd say similar sentiment for Drake London, and I would accordingly draft London and Garrett ahead of Puka Nacua. So I am the lowest in the fantasy life consensus ranks at wide receiver 10. Again, feel free to call me a nothing hater for that. I think this offense could look a lot more like the earlier Rams additions. Cooper Kupp in 2019, 134 targets. Robert Woods, 124. Next season, 139 to 129. Again, we get this 1A, 1B situation. I'm sure Stafford will be just fine with that in fantasy land, but just think that gap between the two a bit too wide for my likings right now. The other waiver wire all-star from last season from this Rams offense, Kyren Williams, pretty strong case for fantasy MVP. Is he deserving of the early round treatment here, Dwain? Because depending on the site, you are able to get a guy who averaged more PPR points per game than anyone other than Christian McCaffrey in round 2 or round 3.
Yeah, I mean, with Kyren, like early on in the offseason, I didn't really want anything to do with it. But that's whenever he was going, if you remember, Ian, like when we first started doing best ball drafts, Kyren was going at the 1-2 turn. And the challenge, that we've had is guys that are in that range, guys that have had later than round 3 capital going into their second season after having these huge first years have almost always fallen off. And the problem is they did draft Blake Corum. Now they've come out and said Kyren's still our guy, but I think that he could get some relief. And I think there's also that potential injury concern with a guy getting a workload that large, being a smaller back. I'm not one of these guys that, you can't draft a smaller back, but I do think when you think about giving someone, potentially 350 touches and they don't weigh 200 pounds, that could be a problem. So I think Corum works in a little bit more this year. There's also just the risk that, he's more like Myles Gaskin, James Robinson. Devonta Freeman's a good example where he actually kept on keeping on, right? And he was a guy that kept doing it, but like Alfred Morris. There's a lot of guys that really fit the same profile that we have with Kyren Williams, where I would want to be careful. I wouldn't want to take him over, really good wide receivers that we know are going to be on the field that are going in that range. Having said all that, if he falls to you in round 3, you start getting a little bit later, he's not going so early in drafts, then I'm more willing, Ian, to click on Kyren Williams. But really curious in your thoughts. Of all the drafts I've done so far, I've not taken a ton of Kyren. I've taken him some now that he's gotten a little bit less expensive, but I'm still pretty careful. I'm not trying to overload all my teams with Kyren Williams.
I've not made a habit either. Sometimes in round 3, but I'll tell you what, I've had a lot of drafts where it's, Derrick Henry and Kyren Williams, and I've even gone ahead and taken Derrick Henry. Look, his rookie season, he had 44 touches. He fractured his foot. He had a high ankle sprain. Last year, he again misses, 4 different games due to an injury. I don't think this dude is necessarily, should be going scot-free. Like, what? Why is Kyren Williams averaging 5 yards per carry that much cooler than James Conner? It's like that HR meme where, Kyren Williams is the cool guy and James Conner is the creepy guy. Again, I'm not saying that you can't go out here and talk about the age and everything, but with the injury proneness, like there is a scale to it, and we can't pretend like Kyren or James Conner or some of these other guys are just 10 out of 10s and every other running back are 0 out of 10. So this was a team that started Cam Akers last year in week 1. I understand he got like 7 touches on the last drive, and that's why he out-touched Kyren Williams, but they did not enter 2023 saying this is going to be the Kyren Williams workhorse show. Once again, Akers got in the doghouse and he got booted to the curb. And Kyren did great with it, but what did the Rams do accordingly? They used day 2 draft capital on Blake Corum. We have general manager Les Snead literally saying Corum was a pick, so we don't just totally run it down Kyren. And McVay has also lauded, again, the Michigan talent a bit too. So really, with Kyren Williams, man, he was someone coming out of Notre Dame that we thought was going to be a plus in the pass game. That was kind of the allure here. It was, okay, he might be the 1B behind Cam Akers right now, but maybe he gets more and he can be a great receiver. Dead last, Dwain, in yards per route run last season among 47 qualified running backs in an offense that doesn't really throw the ball to its running backs. So that's why, again, I think Kyren and Derrick Henry actually is a pretty good conversation because they are expecting to play a pretty similar role. I just don't think Kyren's going to have the same level of workhorse usage as he did last season. So thoughts on Blake Corum, because he's been the one I've been drafting more often. He is a tier 2 handcuff for me, where I really do think if you take Kyren out of the equation, we're going to see Corum with an every down role, probably getting into that top 12.
Yeah, I think Corum is one of the best handcuff selections. I love the way you break them down. Your first tier is really, hey, guys that are already playing, these guys can be in your lineup today, and they've got this contingency handcuff upside of being great. But then the next tier is, okay, these guys that just have this true path, they're in the really good offense, and they could be running back ones immediately if the starter went down. And I do think that Blake Corum is in that bucket. And the beauty is with Sean McVay, we have seen his willingness, to ride one guy completely. We saw it again with Kyren Williams. So I do think if something were to happen, knock on wood, let's say wins the lottery, Ian. I know I like you using that example rather than a player getting hurt. But Kyren wins the lottery, doesn't need to play football for a few weeks. Yeah, I think you're going to feel really great about Blake Corum. And anytime a team invests, draft capital, I don't think this means that he's going to come out and steal away Kyren Williams' job. But, I think there is a chance that he does work himself into getting more snaps than what some people are probably projecting right now, right out of the gate.
Kyren Williams right now, pick 17 overall on ESPN, pick 16 on Yahoo. We also have guys like Travis Etienne, Joe Mixon, not going that much later, but I think it's enough where, again, especially if we haven't kind of gotten past those top 10 or so wide receivers where we just feel really good about their talent, their workload, and the offense they're in, I'm probably going to be taking a wide receiver ahead of Kyren. I just think there are more archetypes down the road that we can probably come closer to matching his production. Now that Corum is at least going to make this more of a 70-30, 65-35 sort of split. I'm not saying he's going to take the job or anything like that, but truly, like, the workhorse role is why I believe that Kyren was able to do the things he did. Only the Buccaneers, Giants, and 49ers gave their RB1 80% or more snaps and more games than the Rams last season. So you can find out tons of cool information like that in Dwain's utilization report tool suite. Also with our projections and our ranks, just a few things that are available with our new FantasyLife Plus service. So hear about all that and much more from the one, the only Matthew Berry. We'll be right back after this quick break.
When I started Fantasy Life, I had one mission in mind, really just one: fantasy football and sports betting for all. And what started out as just a newsletter has now grown into a full-fledged media company. And here I am to tell you we're ready to evolve yet again. I'm introducing Fantasy Life Plus. It's a premium product built upon a suite of fantasy and sports betting tools to take your game to the next level. I know, I hear you, really, Barry, a premium product? Okay, I understand, but get this. Our mission has not changed, right? Our newsletter will forever remain free. All of our expert analysis, free. And we will still provide sets of fantasy football rankings for free. Everything you need to be a great fantasy football manager, you will still be able to do for free at FantasyLife.com. But hey, if you really want to level up, then Fantasy Life Plus is for you. Fantasy Life Plus will introduce new tools like our Draft Champion, customizable rankings, site-wide league sync integration, player prop models, game models, DFS pick'em builders, and so much more. Seriously, just check it out. Go to FantasyLife.com to learn more. And as always, may your trades never be vetoed, may your flex plays always work out, and may your Monday Night Miracles always come through.
All right, Dwain, small turnover in the Los Angeles Rams coaching staff. Obviously, Sean McVay is back for year 8, but with Zach Robinson following Raheem Morris to Atlanta, we do now have Mike LaFleur as the new OC. Not really expecting much to change. Obviously, McVay is the play caller here, but any just overall thoughts on this offense? Because it has evolved a bit over the years, to be fair. Last year, they were just 22nd in terms of pass play rate in neutral situations.
Yeah, I think, McVay is probably trying to do some of what we were talking about, is protect, Matthew Stafford. And we talked about it, when we did the 49ers, preview as well, that one of the best ways to help disguise any sort of offensive line challenges is just by making the defense respect, every square inch. And with the 49ers, you've always got to respect the run game. So there's probably some element to that. That also can make your play action, just a little bit better. Those are the different things that you can do so that the defense can't just tee off on your veteran quarterback. And that probably is a little bit of the equation. Although if we're picking a Madden playbook, I would say pass balance. Not sure what you would say, but when you have Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, I think you're going to still see plenty of passing, but they want to win through efficiency, right? Not just dropping back and throwing the ball a ton. They want to be a more balanced team. So yeah, I think that's a trend that we likely see continue into the season. But the beauty of Sean McVay is he does continue to dial up a lot of the other cheat codes that we want for our wide receivers, for our tight ends. You guys have heard me mention this in the past, but a wide receiver route with motion at the snap is worth 55% more than one without motion at the snap based on PPR points per route over the last 3 seasons. You look at Sean McVay last year, he was second in the league behind only Mike McDaniel. 71% of the plays, he had one of his wide receivers in motion at the snap of the football. That does also include tight ends since they are catching the ball, so I'm including them in receivers here, guys. But that is a huge cheat code. And this is a guy that in the past has shown the willing. It wasn't as high last year, in his play action rate. But he has shown that he's willing to go to that whenever he wants to set up those big plays for Stafford down the field. You guys remember all these plays. It's that big, hard play action from under center, and then you got a guy like a Deshaun Jackson on the deep crosser on the back end of the play. So don't know if the Rams this year, Ian, I don't know what your thoughts are. Tutu Atwell's really the guy that they tried doing some of that with. Last year, he's not on the field as much. So that could have something to do with why we saw the play action rates come down a little bit. They just don't think that maybe they have the guy that they want to use to get that deep shot down the field. The other thing is Stafford taking those potential hits.
Yeah, I mean, unless one of these guys like Jordan Whittingham or Xavier Smith, just a true backup wide receiver that they have more belief in than we do, I don't think they have, that Brandon Cooks sort of field stretcher that we have seen, in previous editions. So Tutu, certainly has the speed, but I mean, Augusta Breeze, and the guy does the chicken dance out there. So
he was good last year until I don't know, probably 4 or 5 weeks of the season. He was great. And then he just kind of fell off. And
then Demarcus Robinson went ahead and took that job. More on him in just a bit. But big thing here is, again, hopefully the offensive line should be in a better position to give Stafford maybe more of those clean pockets to look downfield. Was PFF's 14th ranked offensive line last year, but they returned 4 or 5 starters, gave ex-Lions guard Jonah Jackson a big 3-year, $51 million deal, and also extended their own guard Kevin Dotson with a $48 million deal over 3 years. So takes us to the win total. It is set at 8.5, minus 155 lean on the over. So with those odds, I'm not betting on minus 155, but that tells you where the money is. Yeah, I'll take the over on 8.5. 9.5 is where it's a tough line, Dwain, and that is where I would be taking the under at 9.5. But yeah, at 8.5, I guess give me the over. But yeah, man, no more Aaron Donald. I can't believe we got to 20 minutes into a Rams preview before mentioning that, but no more Aaron Donald. Kudos to them for, doing everything in their power to try to immediately, address that. We've gone through some of these teams and there's a big hole, on the line. And then it's like, well, they didn't really do too much. They did add Florida State defensive lineman Jared Verse and teammate Braden Fitz with their first 2 picks of the draft. So plus 325 to win the division, second behind the 49ers. I do think this is a team probably leaning on, a few veteran players like Cooper Kupp, like Matthew Stafford, where if we do see them just lose 10% of their ability, could prove more problematic than most teams in a hurry. So give me under 9.5, over 8.5. I guess that means I'm predicting a 9-8 team to win.
I'm with you. I think you said it perfectly. I don't have, honestly, a lot to add. The minus 155 tells you everything. I would be on the over, but you can't bet it based on those odds. A little tougher, though, once you get past that. We've got the Cardinals team that's going to be improving. You get Kyler Murray back healthy. They've added weapons to their team. The Seahawks, they make a coaching change with McDonald and then bringing in Ryan Grubb to run the offense. You get Jackson Smith and Jigba healthy this year. That's an offense that's tried to load up on all of their skill position players, just hasn't quite clicked yet. And then obviously the 49ers are in the division. So there's not a team in here that I look at and just think they're dead on arrival like some of these other divisions. It's just going to be very competitive. I think some of it will come down to injuries. A certain team loses a quarterback or a real key player. That's going to be a challenge. But right now, out of the gate, we don't have any of that information. So assuming these teams are all healthy, I'm with you. If that line got to 9.5, that's where I would be pushing more towards the under.
Whether you guys agree or disagree, we invite you to take that action over to DraftKings Sportsbook and get in on all the fun. New customers can actually head on over to DraftKings app now and sign up using our promo code FantasyLife. If you bet $5 on anything, you will receive $150 in bonus bets instantly. Stay in on the action. Use your $150 in bonus bets on DraftKings same game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same game and watch the odds skyrocket. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. DraftKings is the one-stop shop for all things daily fantasy, where you can join in on all the fun and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Again, new customers use our promo code FantasyLife and bet just $5 on any wager to get $150 back in bonus bets instantly. The crown is yours. Not really too much going on with this Rams offense in terms of a position battle, but we do have some figuring out to do at the tight end position. Tyler Higbee, late season ACL tear, and Dr. Jeff Mueller, one of my favorite resources in the industry for, any sort of doctor-related information, does believe a 31-year-old veteran will likely miss half of 2024 and could potentially only return as a rotational player. Even if you don't want to go ahead and trust these doctors out there. I mean, we do have Nick Chubb squatting 600 pounds or whatever it is. What the hell do they know? We did did see the Rams give Colby Parkinson 3 years, $22.5 million with $50.5 million guaranteed. There's also rising second-year talent Davis Allen, who actually was, pretty solid in his only 2 games with a somewhat featured role last year. Ultimately, Dwain, I don't see much of this mattering. The Rams ranked just 26 in total targets at the position since acquiring Stafford. Hey, if we're sitting here after week 1 of the preseason, all of a sudden Parkinson is the undisputed every down tight end, maybe he becomes a late round option. But until then, I'm just staying away from this group.
Yeah, I think it's a stay away, especially for home leagues. I mean, it's like you said, if anything, it's a waiver wire thing. You have a tight end that flops in week 1, doesn't get the playing time you expect. Colby Parkinson or one of these guys is getting 70%. And, you can use them for a few weeks, but eventually Tyler Higbee will be back. And that's just probably going to turn this thing into a complete mess. So I don't want to mess with this tight end position.
Another guy who, again, we aren't saying you need to super go out of your way for, but in this case, I do think he does potentially warrant a very late round pick in your home leagues. It is wide receiver 3, Demarcus Robinson, 90% plus route rate in all 5 of his final meaningful games. As I alluded to before, yes, he did take Tutu Atwell's job by the end of last season, and really Dwain returned some fantastic performances. I mean, from week 13 to week 17, he finished as a PPR wide receiver 20, 23, 25, 15, and then 25 again. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, the soon-to-be 30-year-old veteran who doesn't have a single 500-yard season under his belt is all of a sudden going to displace Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua at the top of the depth chart. But if there was a team out there that could potentially get, boom or bust wide receiver 4 level production out of their number 3 wide receiver, I do think it might be the offense that has led the NFL in total snaps out of 11 personnel in each of the past 3 seasons. So again, even though Demarcus Robinson, maybe just the overall age and career production archetype isn't what we're looking for, I think that's more than accounted for in his cost. And, he's someone that, while I am wary of end of season stretches, when you combine that with the, contract extension and the Rams adding 0 competition to his role, I do think Demarcus Robinson makes a lot of sense as someone you can usually get after the top 80 wide receivers are already off the board.
Yeah, and the key is what you said, that the Rams like to use 11 personnel so much. So he's going to be on the field. He's nowhere close to what we're going to see for Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp. We can call it Puka Kupp, like that works, right? Those guys are so interchangeable in the things that they do. I think it actually works. But with him being on the field, he's going to have a chance. And he was just a weapon a lot in the red zone last year. Ended up with 4 receiving touchdowns, and he really didn't earn that full-time role, like you mentioned, until later in the year. So 1.8% of his routes turned into touchdowns. That's much higher than his career average. So there's also a case there that there could be some regression that could be coming into play. But to your point, he's going to be on the field. It's in an offense that we like. So you could do worse in your home league, probably not drafting him unless you're playing in, an 18, 20 round type league. And in that case, I do think that Demarcus Robinson should be drafted.
Kind of hilariously turning into the anti-DJ Moore or Terry McLaurin. He has now gotten to play with Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Matthew Stafford over the years. So I will give him a little bit of credit. Again, when you do watch his routes, I mean, double move, savage out there, really. And with Baltimore, I think really especially flashed some of that. But just, you put him on the outside. He does a good job defeating man coverage. He presents a different skill set than some of these other guys. Not a burner, but hey, when you stick around with some of these good offenses for as long as he has, I do think Robinson probably a little bit underrated in terms of, mainstream media discourse. But Dwain, all this takes us to our final part of the podcast. That is comparing the Rams to a TV or a movie character. I'm going to, again, kind of go against that and go with more of a full show. I'm talking about that 70s show after it lost Eric, who in this case is going to be Aaron Donald. Couldn't be more polar opposites, like human beings with shrimpy little Eric and then just, first team all alpha Aaron Donald out there. But yeah, you can try to bring in a new cousin. You can try to increase screen time for secondary characters, but still, it's just not the same. So, yeah, I think Hyde and Kelso and Donna and all them, they're still going to be funny. I still think the offense is going to put up points, but as a whole, very different Rams team in the post-Aaron Donald era. And accordingly, I don't think that we're going to necessarily see this group go ahead and emerge with a second Super Bowl level window. So, your thoughts, Dwain?
Yeah, I'm going to go with young Sheldon. I know Sean McVay is not the youngest coach in the league anymore, but he is just one of these guys, he's got the photographic memory and he seems to be able to figure something out that we can't. He knew that Cooper Kupp was going to be a superstar before any of us knew. He knew that Puka Nacua was going to be a superstar before any of us knew. So he's just this guy that just does a really good job of figuring things out and finding ways to put a really good offense on the field, despite the fact that, these guys don't have huge draft capital. I mean, obviously the rest of the league had no clue that Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp were going to be as good as Sean McVay did because they did not take them. Now, you could also argue, well, if Sean McVay really knew they were that good and the scouting department knew they were that good, why didn't they take them sooner in the draft? Fine. Like, you can make that argument. But I'll go with young Sheldon. Again, I know Sean McVay, not as young as he once was, but still a really bright young mind in the coaching circles. And we love to see it because we love the guys. We absolutely love the guys that come out and give their guys an extra advantage versus just saying, I've got good players and a good quarterback, just go line up and win. I get that. I get that you can do that, but why not do the things that a guy like McVay does and just add a little icing on the cake? So I'll go with young Sheldon.
One of the best things I think I've read all year was this Athletic series, spearheaded by Jordan Rodriguez. Fantastic follow with the Athletic. But yeah, Finding Rams, where they actually got a full year behind the scenes of the NFL draft scouting process, really can tell that this is a finely tuned operational machine going on behind the scenes in Los Angeles. So hope you guys enjoyed this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. We'll be back with more and more team previews until we are finished. And then guess what? On to positional week's going to be a great time here as we get you ready for the 2024 fantasy season. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in to the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.